One thing I like about the federal government and obviously the local government of Dubai is that, they do run it as a business. And in doing so, if your business is not going well, they look at making some changes, or they sit down, have a think tank. How can we improve the lives of the residents? When you think back about the sort of 10-year visas, when you think about ease of doing business, the free zones, safety, put that to one side. I mean, that's massively important.
Mario Volpi, head of Brokerage at NOVVI Properties. Welcome to the Rebel Agent podcast.
Thank you very much, David.
40 years in real estate.
I know, you get less for murder, don't you?
Lots to get into. Maybe you could just give a quick introduction and we'll take it from there.
So, as about here or where?
So if we go back to London. So you were, because you worked in London and Dubai.
Yes, I worked in Twickenham, Richmond, so southwest London. So I started my real estate career on the 1st of October 1984.
You know the date?
I do remember the date because I was 17 days away from my 20th birthday. So it was a big month, as it were, big things to come. And the company was just a small independent called Hodges & Dean. I remember it to this day. But I also remember my training. So they walked me in and they said, there's your desk, there's your phone, and there's your applicants. It was a box with cards in it. And she said, so if the phone rings, just answer it. And I went, okay, well, and say what? Well, it's all right, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. So, of course, I sat and I'm looking around and lo and behold, the phone rings. Now, of course, no receptionist in those days, no mobile phones, no nothing. The phone that goes like this for the youngsters that might be watching this. So the phone rang and I thought, oh my God, what do I do? So anyway, I picked it up and of course I'm in a complete pig's ear of it and thought, this is terrible, But every day that passes, you get better.
You learn from it,
You learn from it. That was literally sink or swim. They throw you in at the deep end. There was no training, obviously. But I have to say that sort of 6 to 8 months on, I did enough to actually be warranted as a manager, believe it or not. I was a very young manager, and I've pretty much been manager all my life, or managing people, and I love that.
So you work for various real estate companies in or estate agencies in London. What made you want to come to Dubai?
So actually, I tried to resign in 2007 because I went to Spain and I got a job there, and I came back and my then boss turned around and said, no, I'm not accepting your resignation. He had his own agenda and made it very difficult for me. Now, you could say, well, you just do it, Mario, but he had a lot of influence. And at the time, I thought about it and maybe, the unknown, you start to think, well, maybe I can just stick it out. And actually, I'm glad I did because in 2007 was a terrible year for Spanish real estate.
Yeah. The
market crashed. And ironically, I had one of my best years in Richmond. So I stuck it out. But the bug was always there. And to leave London. Yeah. And I remember going to a family party and my wife's cousins were actually here in Dubai. They were doing the hotel circus. They actually had a band and they were telling me how amazing Dubai was.
Yeah.
So that was the first time that I even heard about Dubai.
But it must have been on your radar a little bit from the point, because there was the big property boom from 2003.
Yes, it was, but to me it seemed too far away, which is why I was just thinking Europe. Do I go to Italy? Do I go to Spain? Where do I go? What's next for me? But as I say, a year later, 2008 came around and I started to put some feelers out. I organised a few interviews from the UK and then a few while I was here. I remember seeing the same sort of people at interviews. I'd go to one and say hello to somebody and then he'd be at the next one as well. So I remember after about a week, I had about 5 job offers. One of which was Ocean View.
Ocean View. So Tim Boswell headed that up at the time, yeah. What was Tim like to work with?
He was a very fidgety gentleman. He would never sit still. When we'd have a meeting with him, I wouldn't be talking to him like this. He'd be up, walking around. So I don't know if he had some sort of issues there, but he couldn't sit still. But a clever guy, I have to say. Yeah. Clever in that he had a vision. Ocean View was the first real estate shop, for want of a better word, to open on a main highway. We were on Sheikh Zayed Road at the time. And fast forward a year or so later, when the metro actually opened up, the Business Bay Metro was right outside. So
perfect location.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't. Maybe he knew. I don't know, but. Yeah, so he had a good vision. He had a lot of good contacts.
Okay, a car background, wasn't it?
He was a car salesman, yeah. That's right, from the Midlands, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, and you went straight in at management. You carried on as a manager, didn't you?
Yeah, so I came in as the manager from the United Kingdom, from London, with procedures, with structures, whatever. And
which I guess that company probably needed.
It probably did need it, but the market wasn't ready for it because... Right. I very quickly realised that despite all the information that I had, all the systems that I had in my head coming from a UK background, it didn't work here. You know, I was talking to agents saying, you know, you shouldn't do it this way, you should try it this way, and in the end they were just saying, well, like, who are you? You know, they were all driving around in very expensive flash cars, some supercars. And I'm driving around whatever hire car I had.
Because they've made a lot of money. They're
absolutely. You've got to remember, this was 2008.
Yeah.
I started on the 14th of August 2008, and so I had a bit of a crisis of confidence. I've mentioned this before. You know, I'd moved my family over. My daughter was nearly 5. My wife gave up her job. We rented the house. We did everything, and completely moved. And my wife had never been to Dubai before. I'd only been a few months earlier for the interviews. Commitment. It was a big commitment, but that was, at the time, we thought the crest of the wave, you know. So anyway, I went out and bought a book to build my confidence up again. Right. You've got to remember, I had 24 years of real estate experience at that time. Yeah. So you think... You know a bit.
Working with staff that respect you and largely follow your orders, I would imagine.
Potentially, yes. Yeah. Of course. But I got here and it was their way or the highway and they wouldn't listen. And so I did start to question my own sanity. What have I done? But then I had to make it work. So as I say, I bought a book, started to read up about, yes, you can do it. Come on, shake yourself down. And a few weeks later, I went straight back into it and I gave as good as I got.
Great. At Ocean View.
At Ocean View, yeah. But then the market crashed, of course.
Yes. Yeah. So what followed then?
So it was a difficult period because the financial crash happened globally. So Dubai was not just immune to it. It was around the world. And we were unfortunately having to make lots of changes. We were paying salaries at the time to agents. There was a small salary and commission. So we decided, first of all, to remove the salaries, commission only. But as it got further into it and realized it wasn't just a blip that was going to be over in a month or two, we had to make further structural changes to the business, and unfortunately, we lost a lot of agents. Some had gone to England. We'd called them up and say, "Don't bother coming back,"
right?
Which was a terrible conversation we had to have. You know, different time, different place. When I look back, I think the competition is very high now. Lots and lots and lots of companies, lots of agents. There, if I remember rightly, there was around maybe 3,000 agents. Now there's probably about 30-odd thousand agents. Yeah,
but still 3,000 was a lot at that time.
It was.
With the amount.
Correct. But of course, you've got to remember that we couldn't give things away then. So it doesn't matter that the competition is low.
Yeah.
When the buyer doesn't want to buy, you know, no one's going to do a sale. So we had to obviously work very hard in getting prices down. I had one lady, I remember, calling me saying, you know, you need to sell my floors. And I'm thinking, floors? And this was just a housewife from the UK. She bought floors in Abu Dhabi and said, you need to sell my property. And I said, well, what do you want for it? Well, I want my OP and premium of X.
I don't think so.
Premium? I said, madam, do you know what's gone on? You know, do you know what's happened? I can't possibly lose money, she would say. And I said, I'm sure you wouldn't. But anyway, of course, she didn't want to come down, never heard from her, so I don't know what happened to her. But these are real life stories that you have to deal with at the time because the market just wasn't there. So,
and if they don't get out, they've got instalments to pay.
Of course.
Which if they don't, they're going to lose it, aren't they? So that's likely happened with her.
There was a lot of, dare I say, suicides as well. I mean, people literally were just throwing themselves off bridges and buildings and what have you, so you just couldn't cope. Terrible, terrible time. and a lot of people ran away, as you know, late 2008, 9. So, of course, we changed the business. I myself also had to, my salary was looked at and cut and cut. And by the time Tim sort of tried to cut it a third time, I said, well, do you want me to pay you to work for you? It got a bit ridiculous in some respects, but then I had to make it work. So we parted ways in a good way. Yeah. I always believe in that. And then I went to work for Powerhouse.
Yeah, Powerhouse. So was that the early days of Powerhouse?
Yeah, it was the original. Yeah. There was Miles and his business partner, a guy called John O'Kelly. So
and how did it go at Powerhouse?
Yeah, look, I had to go back into real estate as a broker,
as an agent.
As an agent. Technically, I was what they called a team leader. I think I looked after a couple of people, but my main role was selling or renting. You know, nowadays we ask agents to focus on an area, to be a specialist of that area. At that time, no, it was literally just do any deal that you could. And I remember doing deals from north, south, east, and west, from commercial to residential to sales to rentals, and you know, you literally just had to survive. And so I did well enough because I was the first. I'm not very good on the keyboard, very old school.
We're of a certain age, aren't we?
And of course, I came in. I was the first in. Those were the days when Dubizzle, you had your own account. You could have up to 5 properties.
Per agent?
Yeah, per agent.
Really?
You could have actually advertise 5 per individual. And so I was the first in to ensure that I deleted it and put it back on, so that come 9 o'clock, I was ready. I was basically ready to go. And of course, other agents would then stroll in at 9:30, 10, whatever. But literally every time the phone rang, and there was a phone on the desk, I would answer it, and I was always the first to actually get the leads. And of course, this then led to other agents complaining to Miles, saying, you know, he's always getting the leads. Now, I would have thought that he would have turned around and said, well, we'll beat Mario to the phone, you know. No. What he did is he decided to bring in a receptionist, and in doing so, obviously, cut my source of leads, because she would get the leads and then they'd get distributed. But, you know, you'd get towards the end of the month and you would say to yourself, you'd look yourself in the mirror and you say, well, you know, what have you earned? What have you done today? It really got you out of bed early. I'd never worked for no salary before. I mean, in the UK, there was always a salary, commission, either as a negotiator, like I started, and then obviously as a manager. And I've worked pool commission, I've worked personal commission, but never commission only. And so I was very critical of myself. I ensured that nothing would stop me from succeeding, and dare I say at that time making ends meet, because I'd moved my whole family, and you have to do it. And you know, fortune favors the brave, and you just got to be at the right place at the right time, and things would work out. Some months were better than others.
Well, all credit to you for grafting like that, particularly coming back from a management role, and you went into management again, as we'll get into in a moment or two. But we were having a chat earlier, and I think we agreed that helped shape you and help you become the manager you are today. The fact that you did do agency work and you were an agent.
Yeah, it helps me, because when I'm having conversations with brokers, whether they're new or old, you have a level of, you can see there's a level of respect from them to you, because you've been there and done that.
Yes.
Whether you were super successful or not, you've walked the same road that they're either currently working. So any voices of advice, any particular pearls of wisdom or whatever, is taken more graciously. Whereas if I'd been a mobile phone salesman or any other salesman, I know sales is sales. But what we experience here in Dubai as a real estate agent, I think is different. So to have done that, been there and done that, and got the T-shirt perhaps, has helped me for sure to be able to either explain myself to someone when I am trying to help them, because that's the ethos of me. I love helping people.
Yeah, and that shows. That's really good. So you moved on eventually from Powerhouse, and you've worked for a number of agencies at management level. Just one of the highlights, I would say, you were at Axe Capital. Was that right?
That's right. Yeah. So that was.
So we've skipped a few.
Yeah. There's quite. We have, but the beauty about having worked for a few companies. I mean, I've been here now. I mean, I'm in my 17th year, so I've been here 16 years. And in that time, I can say I've worked for seven odd companies, whatever, which over 16 years doesn't seem much. But at the beginning, it was, like 6 companies or 5 companies in 5 or 6 years, one a year. That completely ruined my CV. I mean, I had 3 jobs in 24 years in the UK. So you could average it out of 8 years at a term. But here, it was different because it was a different time. I now look at a CV totally differently as perhaps I would have done with a British head on.
Yeah.
You think people are job hopping when you see them moving around, but there's always a story to tell, and I want to dig deep and actually understand what happened before making my own.
But you say ruin the CV, you still keep getting these big jobs. So it's not that much. Really.
No, well, yes, in that respect is good. I just meant that jumping around. But what I was going to say is that it gave me an opportunity to look at how those companies were run. Now, some were run very well, some not so much, but then that's down to the personal, the owner or personal contact that the owner had. But I was able then to take ideas or have an understanding of what worked well. And I always say what works today doesn't work tomorrow. But if you have that in your armory, if you have that in your repertoire, you can always go in and pull out a file and think, well, that happened then. Let's see if it works now. So there's always something to actually go to. I tend to use my brain and not ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Maybe we'll get onto that in a bit. So Axe Capital, just lots of publicity everywhere and grew very quickly, didn't they? Were you in at the beginning, and were you head of brokerage at Axe Capital?
No. I joined in 2023. It was I believe beginning of February of 2023. No, I joined because when I worked at Engel and Völkers, I had a manager called Ben. Ben actually then invited me. In fact, he'd been trying.
Ben Thomas.
Ben was trying to get me to work at Axe Capital for a while, and maybe the timing wasn't right. Whatever. Anyway, I joined as a sales director. At one stage, I had as many as 90 people in my team.
Really?
And we did really well. The beauty about secondary market is that most companies will allow a secondary market agent to do both secondary and off-plan. If you're doing off-plan purely, you can only do off-plan.
Right.
Therefore, if you have a client that wants to either sell a property, even if it's still under construction, it's regarded as secondary market, it would have to be passed out to the secondary team. So I was always an advocate to say to people, look, yes, okay, you're not put on campaigns in secondary, but you have listings and you get leads that way. And so use your repertoire, use your strategy to convert a secondary market lead into potentially an off-plan lead. So they were able to do both, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. I got it the wrong way around. You were there after Engel and Völkers.
Yes, that's right.
Talk to me about Engel and Völkers. Obviously, German company. You were there 5 years, and you were head of brokerage there.
No, I was just a sales manager.
You were a sales
I'm only
manager.
head of brokerage at NOVVI Properties.
Okay,
and actually, as a result of wanting to run a real estate company, drove me to keep going for the top job at EMV. But for whatever reason, they either didn't believe I was right for it or ready for it, or you name it. They kept interviewing and offering the job to other people. So ultimately, at the third time of asking, I said, well, clearly they don't believe in me, despite the fact that they said I was their best manager ever.
Right.
And still I have all the accolades there, what have you. But look, Engel and Völkers was a good company, brand,
well run,
global name, well run. I mean, there's always question marks over that, but ultimately, it was success. It was successful enough that it worked in Dubai. There are many of these franchise companies that do very well in their home countries, but they don't necessarily do well here.
It depends on the franchisee, doesn't it, a lot?
No, absolutely. And in actual fact, it did well, I think, once Nikhil merged with it, because it was a franchise and a lot of those closed. Then Nikhil came in as a majority shareholder, or as a shareholder, whatever, joint venture partner. And of course, that's when I was there.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah, so we had a lot of backing, and it's a bit like sort of Hamptons are with Emaar.
Yep.
There's that sort of connection. So there was always, I'm not saying there were favours, because we still had to fight for everything that we needed to get, but certainly it helped. You had access to the decision makers at Nikhil. But of course, they also changed a lot. And towards the latter part of my tenure there, they divorced, as it were. So the partnership dissolved, and Nikhil went different ways.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot more sense now, because I did think it was strange that you went from a top position at Engel and Völkers to NOVVI. So when you moved on to NOVVI, which is where you are now, you are head of brokerage.
You got it right this time.
Great, we got there. Yeah, and that was, I presume, the decision. Now you could be head of brokerage and shape it the way you wanted. Right. When did you start at NOVVI?
So I started on the 1st of May in 2024.
So just less than a year.
Yeah, it's coming up to a year. And ironically, when I handed in my resignation at Axe Capital, as is normal, you think that they would, ask you to leave there and then. But both Engel and Völkers and Axe Capital made me work my notice. In fact, Engel and Völkers made me work 3 months. And at Axe also, I had to work my month's notice.
I mean, 3 months is a really long time.
It was, yeah. But I also took it as a compliment. I always give everything. I give everything in the sense that even if I've joined another company, to the last minute, I will always give to that company and make a clean break and then move on. To the point that when I asked Ben, actually, I was starting on the 1st of May, which was a Wednesday. I asked him, could I finish on the Friday before? So I'd have Saturday, Sunday, Monday and Tuesday. So I'd have 4 days off to kind of mentally prepare and relax before. He said, no, I want you in Monday and Tuesday. So,
Ben.
I mean, seriously, I said to him, what you like, So I'm at Axe Capital.
Activated those 2 days.
Well, perhaps not, but I still turned up on time, suited and booted. So Monday and Tuesday at Axe Capital, and literally went to bed. The next day, started at NOVVI Properties.
Yeah, and NOVVI Properties had been going 1 year prior?
Yeah, it was about a year beforehand. Yes, it's so technically it's a startup.
Yeah,
I often thought that I would never work for a startup. In fact, the owner was kind of wanting me to join 14 months before I actually joined, and I just thought it's too much like hard work, creature of habit, I guess, and all the rest of it. But then I started to think, well, maybe I can use my influence to push the NOVVI name out there. When I say my influence, now and then I'm on the radio.
You're very well known in the market. I spoke to a few people before you came on the podcast, and everyone spoke highly of you and said, "Oh, it's great that you've got Mario on." So,
that's very kind. Believe it or not, and I'm actually quite humble. And even though I'm saying it, which sounds kind of weird, I push myself to do these things, but I do fret and I do worry, because despite the fact that people say, "Oh yeah, you're a natural," the rest of it, no, it's all in the preparation. If you don't prepare, then I mean, I even have nightmares about it. Literally, when you're having to stand in front of 300 people, because when you're there, they know you're there because you're the expert. And if you make a mistake, which obviously we're human, we make mistakes, but it does keep me up at night, to be fair.
Yeah. But it keeps you focused and...
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So who is the owner of NOVVI?
He's an individual who likes to keep himself to himself.
Fine, yeah.
He's a young man with a great vision, and he's helped me to push NOVVI where we want it to be. And actually, there's a good story to that. So after about a couple of months after I was already there, he asked me, am I busy? And I said, okay, what do you need? He said, come with me. So we get into his car and we drive down the road, and we go to this car showroom. And inside the car showroom, I see two Tesla Cybertrucks facing each other like this. Now, I'd never seen a Cybertruck before, or at least not in real life. And he said, I'm thinking of buying one of these. And I said, well, for yourself? He said, no, for the company. And I went, do it. I mean, I thought it was a genius idea, because everybody up until that point said, don't spend the money, spend it on marketing, billboard or whatever. And I thought, no, spend it. I mean, here you have an asset, admittedly a depreciating one. Cars obviously do depreciate, but you're going to sell it one day and get something back, plus all the publicity you're going to get.
Yeah.
Don't forget that apart from the police, and we're going back maybe 7 months ago now, 8 months ago, perhaps even longer, nobody had one. So he got it imported from America. We branded it, and even to this day, we're known as the agents with the Cybertruck. So it was a genius idea.
Yeah.
And yet I was the only one that said to him, do it, because actually you won't regret it. And when you're fed up with it or whatever,
I'll have it.
well, I'm sure we can sell it. But now we use it as a car that we take clients around in.
Yeah, no, that's a good story. How much involvement does he have in the business? Is he there on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, he is.
Does he have a real estate background?
He doesn't, or he didn't, but that's how he got into it. He got into it because actually he was treated very badly by agents.
Right.
He bought everything at the right time, type of thing. So all his real estate has massively appreciated. So he learned from every experience how basically not to do it. So his ethos is very much integrity, honesty, commitment, and so the clients are at the heart of NOVVI's philosophy.
Yeah.
And so we only want agents to do things the right way. We'd rather walk away from a deal if the deal is not right.
I think both of you are very principled, aren't you? And that's what you're trying to install in your agents. Let's talk about your agents. What general advice would you give to agents? I know it depends on their experience and what stage they're at, but have you got any sort of pointers?
Yeah, I mean, obviously believe in what you're doing, for sure. Be committed to the role. Real estate, especially now, like I said earlier, is very, very competitive. In fact, I'm quite in awe of a lot of my agents, because when I think back to what it was like before, yeah, it was tough in the sense that the market wasn't there, but you were one of the few that were doing it. Now you're one of the many that are doing it. So how do you stand out? And
as you said, 30,000.
Well, I mean, I don't even know whether that's a real figure. I mean, some people say 20, some say 25, some say 30. And those are just the registered ones. I mean, there are still the unregistered ones, the freelancers who we know are illegal, but they do work with companies to close deals. So the competition is very high. So I would say believe in yourself, believe in what you're doing, but have a system. Have a system and stick to it. If it doesn't work, make some changes, tweak it, but essentially keep to that system. By that I mean business developing. If you have listings, make sure that those listings are first on the page. Change the description, change the photos, be a little bit different, which worries me now. We talked about ChatGPT. AI is coming into a lot of these descriptions. So does that mean that all adverts are going to look the same now? Where's the individuality gone? Yeah. But certainly do listing management, keep in touch with your owners, because if the only time you have a touch point with your owner or the owner is at the point of the listing, and then you never speak to them ever again until you get an offer, they don't know you.
No.
If, however, you've said, I've had a viewing, this is the feedback, good or bad, keep them in touch. When then you get an offer, you're more likely to have a meaningful conversation with somebody that already knows who you are.
Yes. You're going to be a lot more persuasive, aren't you?
Well, maybe they'll listen to you more.
Yes.
Of course, owners have their own ideas, for sure.
They're a different tricky bunch sometimes.
They are. But I always say the time to actually prepare an owner for an offer is not at the time of getting the offer. It's at the time of getting the listing.
Yeah.
Because you need to understand, why are they selling? And many times people don't even qualify sellers. They might qualify buyers, but they don't qualify sellers. So there's many things that you need to know. It's a people business at the end of the day. So with new agents, lower your expectations. Everybody thinks you're going to become a millionaire. And look, a few of them do. But there are many that unfortunately do fall by the wayside.
It's only 1 or 2%, really, isn't it, that make these big bucks that people see.
Exactly. And so for advice to new agents would be, have a plan, stick with it, believe in yourself, consistency, but have different things that if certain things don't work today, you've got a plan B and a plan C. But that all of these things do actually work, but they may not work today, but they might work tomorrow. Yeah.
And I saw you on another podcast and you were talking about adding value, which I thought was very good.
Well, I always say that to try and stand out, if the person you're working with sees value in you, they will definitely work with you. It doesn't matter about your reputation because you're only as good as your last sale. You're only as good as whatever it is that you've done today or yesterday. And that's why it's really important to find ways of doing another deal. Because if your last deal was 3-4 months ago, and some people, that is the case, things start to creep into your head, and mental health is a big problem.
Negative thoughts, absolutely. And mental health. Yeah. Okay, let's get on to the market. Get your crystal ball out. Where do you see it going over the next few years?
Well, the first thing I will say is that nobody knows, of course, and so that's my caveat. Nobody knows, but people have ideas. Now, I can say that today the fundamentals of why we are where we are based on good, solid fundamentals. And there are many. The attraction to Dubai is tenfold compared to other cities or countries in the world. And so when you look at the number of people who are wanting to make Dubai either their home or indeed want a slice of it, it's exponential. And so the number of people that are coming, there is a tipping point of around about late 26 to 2027. That's if we stay at the same level of incoming population. The tipping point then will be 26, 27. So if that should increase or become more robust than it is, then this bull run will probably run a bit further. Now, obviously, what goes up has to come down. But I don't like to use the word correction because correction then makes it sound like there is a problem and you're correcting it. There is no problem. It's a very, very buoyant market. The shoe is definitely on the foot of the seller and the landlord.
Yes.
So there will be a period of stability, perhaps, that will come in towards later next year and beginning of the year after. That's to say, if we remain the same. Now, if numbers start to decrease, they don't come in and people start to leave Dubai, then we might have that will come in sooner. The sort of stability will come in sooner, and then doubts will start to creep in. Now, buyers obviously want this because they've had enough of prices going up, clearly, whereas sellers are just thinking this is a cash cow and they can dictate the pace. The proper market we want is a little bit more of each of them, an equilibrium market, clearly, but nobody will ever tell you that. Buyers want it to be a buyer's market and sellers want it to be a seller's market. So the level of handovers is a worry because the level of developer property launches is mind-blowing. It's
whenever every 19 hours, something like that, isn't it?
It's slowed down a little bit, to be fair, but it's still too much. And actually, I don't even know how agents are keeping up with it. I mean, I've got some guys, I know it's Ramadan, they're going to iftars and sahur. I mean, they're being fed by the developers, if you like, on a daily basis. But even prior to Ramadan, there was one launch after the other and bringing in more and more spectacular artists, Christina Aguilera. I mean, the other day there was I was at Ellington and crikey, I've forgotten his name now. See, when you get old, you forget his name. But some sort of Canadian rocker came on.
A celebrity.
It will come to me, but I can't think of I've got Joe Cocker in my head, and I don't know why, because it wasn't Joe Cocker. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that they're trying to better each other, to entertain the agents, or to say, come down because you might get a chance of meeting so-and-so. And then you have big guns like Ryan Serhant and a few other sort of motivational speakers that come down. Even us at NOVVI, we invited Daniel G down last year, and that was at the Museum of the Future. That was my first gig for NOVVI. Literally, I'd only just joined, and there I was, 300 people in the Museum of the Future auditorium. I mean, it was a lovely setting, and it was all free for agents. We wanted them to come down to show what NOVVI was all about. But at the same time, we also had James Glass, which I know you've had on the podcast too. So he was part of that, and all to showcase that, we are a caring company. This is what we do for our agents, and we don't mind doing it for the competition as well.
It works, doesn't it? And then just going back to this population growth, with the 2040 vision and a target, I think, which has been raised to 7.8 million by 2040, all the other targets that I've seen over the years, they've hit them. So I've no reason to believe that it won't hit that 7.8 or maybe go further, particularly when you look at the problems in so many countries throughout the world. And if it isn't one region, it becomes another region that's got a problem. And Dubai is very open to all these people.
One thing I like about the federal government and obviously the local government of Dubai is that they do run it as a business. And in doing so, if your business is not going well, they look at making some changes, or they sit down, have a think tank. How can we improve the lives of the residents? I mean, when you think back about the sort of 10-year visas, when you think about ease of doing business, the free zones, safety, put that to one side. I mean, that's massively important, but let's just park that there for the moment.
That's a given almost.
Kind of. I mean, Dubai and Abu Dhabi have been voted the 1 and 2 most safest cities in the world for years, and all these memes of people dropping wallets and it's still there, and et cetera, et cetera. You've got to be careful. As more people come in, different desirables or undesirables perhaps might start to filter in. So we have to...
But people change to the culture in that country already, I think.
They do. And the ones that don't end up in prison. So yes, you're right. But what I'm just saying, it would be lovely to think that ad infinitum, it's always going to be like that. Maybe I think that's through rose-tinted glasses. However, safety is massively important. The family is at its heart. And because Europe, America, UK and other parts of the world are not, that's what's attracting people to look at Dubai. Forget the millionaires, even though the majority of them are coming here. I'm talking about ordinary people as well. Because if it's only attracting millionaires, if it's only attracting the high net worth individuals, then it's going to become a bit like Monaco. Where is the restaurateur, or should I say the waiting staff or the workers? Where are they going to live? How are they going to live? But I do like the fact that they are constantly, I'm talking about the governments now, they're constantly innovating and keeping Dubai at the forefront on the world stage. And that is also the key to attracting all these people. And things like podcasts and all sorts of information that filters out into the world all helps to just get that message out there.
Yeah. And then just one thing on, you said what goes up must come down. I agree with that up to a point. We go through cycles. But if you look at the global debt at the moment, and I sound like a broken record because I say this on virtually every podcast, but it is very high. And the solution to that problem is money printing. And a lot of that printing will go somewhere. An asset such as property is... it's highly likely that a lot's going to go into that. So in nominal terms, I can see prices going on for a number of years. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen. Like you said at the beginning, nobody really knows.
No, but you're right.
I think people might be surprised, particularly when you look at how cheap it is compared with other international cities.
Correct, yeah. The 1,000 square foot property can be bought here, whereas in Monte Carlo it's just a...
or even London or Berlin
or whatever. Exactly. So no, on the world stage, Dubai is still regarded as value for money, despite the fact of 2 or 3 years of house price increases and really stellar increases. But like I say, there has to be a period of stability that is good for the market. And it just means that we can all catch our breath and then off we go again. It's okay. We can have a sustained period of growth, but it cannot be 20 or 30% a year, is all I'm trying to say.
Agreed.
So if even if we slow down, now some of the headlines is, because I talked about it on a podcast, is that, house price inflation has slowed. Everybody's saying, "Oh, market is coming down." It isn't that. It's still gone up. It just hasn't gone up as much, which is good. We want that. We want sellers to understand that they cannot just dictate the pace all the time. But we also want buyers to understand that the market is not going to crash. I know that sounds like famous last words, but I've been here in the crash. In fact, I've been through around 4 recessions, 2 to 3 in the UK, and you can say 2 here. 1, the financial crash, and then of course the downturn from 2014 all the way up to 2020. 2020 should have been a recovery year, but then of course COVID came and sort of kicked that down the road for at least a year. But since 2021, it's been exponential growth all the time. In fact, probably too much in some respects. I remember in the UK, a 10% growth year on year was a good year.
Definitely.
Here, unless it's 20 or 30%, it's not sensational enough, Yeah. So we need to get back to that kind of steady growth.
Yeah, buyers and sellers do need to be educated, and that's your job, isn't it? And what you're doing. Before I let you go, let's talk about Chelsea Football Club.
Amazing.
Well, you've told me before, and I've forgotten. I don't want to get it wrong again. What's your position?
So I'm the assistant secretary to the official UAE Chelsea Supporters Club here. Now,
and what does that involve?
The secretary is actually in London, so technically I'm the big cheese here, even though I'm the assistant secretary. What does it involve? We have others as well in the group. There's 4 of us in total. 3 are here in Dubai. 1 is in London because they have to attend annual general meetings. We're a platinum club, and what I tend to do is, we bring together as many Chelsea supporters to come and visit us at the Belgian Beer Cafe in the Grand Millennium Hotel. We're on the sort of rooftop where it's all Chelsea. So I would welcome anybody listening to this podcast, if you're in Dubai and Chelsea's playing, to come to the Belgian Beer Cafe and cheer us on, because we need all the help we can get.
That's an excellent plug. How many do you normally?
Well, the previous administration managed only sort of, dare I say, 15, possibly as many as 20, and it was a different venue. We've managed to get on a football game against Arsenal, not recently, the one before, over 100 people there.
Wow. Back to exponential growth.
Well, yes, and but on average we're around 30 to 50 come down, depending on the timing. Of course, if it's midnight, then we don't get that number. But recently I managed to work with Chris McCarty at ARN.
Wow.
And we did a podcast there called the Obi-Wan podcast with John Obi Mikel, and we had way over 200 people come down. He did the podcast, he watched the game with us. We lost to Man City, unfortunately. He stayed afterwards to sort of recap, and that was an amazing day, because all fans want is that touch point. There is a man who was telling stories about Roman Abramovich, telling stories about his father getting kidnapped in Nigeria, during the, I think it was 94 World Cup.
What a story.
And telling us what it was like to win the Champions League, and for a proper fan, that's, you're going to hold on to that. And of course, he stuck by photos. It was an amazing event, and we're trying to do other things as well now for the club. So yeah, I really enjoy it. It's my 2 hours away, where I just get to shout at the screen and sing some songs.
I can see you're passionate about it. Well, I don't wish you well in the next game. That's with Tottenham.
Yeah, because we're playing Tottenham. That's right. Yeah.
So we'll see what you've had the better over us over the last few years, certainly. But we'll see what happens. But really enjoyed chatting to you today. Contact details. What's the best thing? What's the best way? LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn. My email is just Mario@NOVVI Properties. NOVVI is with double V, by the way. Mario@NOVVIProperties.com. LinkedIn. Mario Volpi 18 is my social media on Instagram. So yeah.
Yeah,
like
people
and
will
subscribe.
remember that, or I'll put it in the
Amazing.
description. So
Super Mario.
thanks very much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks, Tim.